Welcome everybody out to podcast number 456. And today we are going to finish, or in this episode, we're going to finish the topic of how do we implement production control, schedule control, and tactic control. Our last topic here is how to manage production. Stay with us.
This is the Elevate Construction Podcast, delivering remarkable content for workers, leaders, and companies in construction wanting to take their next step. Get ready to step out of your comfort zone with Jason Schroeder as he encourages you to do better, live a remarkable life, and expect more. Let's go.
Welcome everybody. I hope you're doing well. And this is going to be a jamming little close out to the podcast series. And so we'll just get right into it. So production, how do we manage production? Well, from a production standpoint, and all of these topics really interweave with each other, but these are specific production laws that I want to talk about and discuss today. So optimizing bottlenecks. Let's first talk about that. So the law of bottlenecks says that every system will have bottlenecks. And once you optimize or increase the capacity of a bottleneck in your system, that you will have new bottlenecks show up. And I 100% agree with this statement. Now, in construction, you do not have a string of disconnected activities that as a part of a critical path that become your bottleneck. Your bottleneck actually is a process bottleneck, meaning it's a trade going from area to area or a specific scope of work, or it can even be an area, but it won't be a string of disconnected activities. And so if you have a process bottleneck and you have I've identified that and you've helped that process bottleneck be successful by either splitting up the areas or getting better expertise, better sequences, reducing waste, improving the system with continuous improvement, doing a Kaizen event, basically doing the work in a different way, breaking up the sequence, prefabricating, pre-staging, whatever you've done to optimize that bottleneck, now you will have new bottlenecks. And so if you want to increase productivity or manage production on your project side, then we need to be looking for those process bottlenecks and improving them, and then looking for the next one and the next one and the next one. And that will create speed and flow in your production system, your schedule control, and your tactic control. The other thing is, the other little sticky that I have on the mirror board is optimizing cycle times. So cycle times are, if you have a 5-day takt window and your takt wagon has a 4.5-day cycle time, that means that process, that cycle, and in manufacturing it means a little bit different. It's more specific than this, but in construction, I apply it to be that task, that cycle of work. The cycle time for that within the takt time must be optimized. Meaning, if we got it done in 4.5 days, and everybody was safe and level, clean, organized, everything was doing very well, how can we get it down to 4.25 days? How can we get it down to 4 days and optimize those cycle times and do better and better and better every day without pushing people, stacking people, or doing things that would make workers work fast? Okay, so we always have to optimize cycle times. And we do that kind of like what you would do if you were playing a simulation or practicing as a football team, or just doing anything where you are attempting to follow the plan, do, check, act cycle and get better every single time. So we have to optimize those cycle times, and we have to make sure that each crew is individually and collectively at the same time attempting to get better to increase flow and production throughout the entire project site. We've always we've already talked about limiting work in process and keeping a leveled flow. So when we want to increase production, we will do that when we work like the tortoise, not the hare. The hare speeds up, slows down, speeds up, slows down. Work in process, or WIP, is something that we absolutely have to manage. So great builders, great superintendents will always make sure that the leveling process is taking place on their project sites, and they know exactly how to create an even flow of work so that not only can we do that repetitive optimizing of cycle times, but we do it in a leveled manner to where the team even has the time and the capacity to optimize those cycle times. So we want to have an even amount of work in process. We don't want to have those, or work in progress, however you want to say it. We don't want to have those spikes. The other thing is increasing labor productivity. So I talk about this in the Takt training, but I'll give you just a couple of them right here. So when we are able to reduce context switching, we increase labor productivity. When we are able to estimate based on level of effort and not time, we increase labor productivity. When we are able to focus on tasks, consistent tasks instead of switching and having multiple projects for a crew or a team, we increase productivity. When we have consistent leaders and consistent crew composition, we increase productivity. When we have the right team size, we increase productivity. When we reduce the complexity of communication, we increase productivity. When we make sure that we level and we can get work done within the normal hours and not overtime, we increase productivity. When we have less of a need to onboard and orient new workers because we have fluctuating worker counts, we increase productivity. So these are all really neat concepts that you can learn from us, or most especially from Felipe Engineer in the Scrum Inc. course, right? But the bottom line is, overtime is only effective for a few weeks. If you have too large of team sizes, communication gets too complex. If you have a lot of people fluctuating in and out of crews, there's too much onboarding that happens, too much context switching. If you don't have crews focused on tasks, there's too much context switching. When you change the leaders out, you lose production. When you change the crew composition, you lose production. When you have too many projects you're working on for a crew or an individual, you lose production. And when you add manpower, especially at the later ends of a project, you will increase that project duration. The other one, so we've talked about the law of bottlenecks, right? And then we've talked about basically Kingman's formula, that we need to optimize cycle times. But here's one that ties into Kingman's formula and the law of the effect of variation, which you can read in Nicholas Modig's book, This is Lean. And the bottom line here is that as variation increases, your project duration increases. As variation decreases, your project duration decreases, meaning that the more variation a project team has, the longer things take. The less variation things have, the less the time things take. So if you want to increase production in the field, you won't go out there and randomly start pointing fingers and changing everything all at once. You will do everything you can to reduce variation and to create more stability. Now let's go back to the concept of managing work in process. Now, there's three key considerations there, which are batch sizes, limiting work in process, and finishing as you go. Finishing as you go shows up all over the place in this little outline here. And actually, so remind me at the end of this podcast, I need to summarize what the most important considerations are. But Little's law, or with tax planning, Louis and Vinegar's law from Janosch and Marco in Germany, it's basically this production law says that you need to have the right batch sizes, the right tact zones. You cannot increase production. I want you to hear me on this. Anywhere, unless or if you have your batch sizes or your tact zones fighting against you. I've told you the story about a construction project where they had the wrong batch sizes, the wrong zoning, the wrong pour breaks for a structure. No matter who they brought in to attempt to increase production, they couldn't do it. And it's because fundamentally, they had a problem with their batch sizes. And once they adjusted their batch sizes, they were immediately able to increase their production and start hitting their targets. The other thing is, as a part of managing work in process, we need to limit work in process. We need to make sure that we're doing focused items one thing at a time as much as we possibly can. And then the finishing as you go, don't stack up work to be done later. Most of the time I hear superintendents throughout the industry being like, let's really, really hurry and push and get this job done so that I have 3 months at the end to go fix all the stuff I didn't install right. Well, screw that. Like, let's just finish things as we go, and that will increase production. So again, optimize bottlenecks, optimize cycle times, manage work in process by having the right batch sizes, task zones, finish as you go, increase your labor productivity, and reduce variation. So those are all based around Little's law, the law of bottlenecks, the law of the effective variation, and Kingman's formula. I talk about those a lot. And a big shout out to Hal Macomber and Adam Hoots for tipping me off to those and allowing me to actually find out why these things work. I mean, before it was just like, hey, Takt is great. But now we know mathematically and scientifically why it's great. So very, very happy about that. Anyway, so this concludes our little series here, but there is something that I want to cover just as a bonus here at the end. And there's some reflections that I've had recently when it comes to tax planning, and I find that they're very, very interesting, and I want to share them with you right now. So number one, Takt allows you to see, remove, and absorb roadblocks. See because it's a visual schedule, remove them because the team has the capacity to do so, and absorb them because you can absorb them with buffers, because you've created buffers from an optimization. Now, in any tax planning or tax control situation, the owner and the leadership team should always be able to see at a glance what has been done, what you and your individual role needs to do to help create flow in production, and know where the entire project is at real time with accurate data at any time. The other thing that I would say, tax control is all about having less or fewer conversations about when things are going to happen and more conversations about how they're going to happen. That's probably the biggest realization. You can go to any project and see if they're high functioning with tax control immediately by seeing what they spend most of their time on. Let me ask you a question. For the superintendent and foreman control, creating stability, leveling work, removing roadblocks, installing with a quality product, and increasing production, are those how items, or are they when items? Are they when items, or are they how items? Every single thing that I mentioned here with this tax control outline is a how item. We should already know when things are going to happen. Now I love the last planner system, so don't get me wrong, but people are all enamored about meetings where we go and we talk about when things should happen. So there's this funny YouTube guy that my wife listens to, and he's like, what the hell? Like, what? Why would we need to know that? We already know that because we have a tax plan. We don't need to talk about that in meetings. If you tell pull planning experts that you're going to have a detailed pull plan for every single activity on the project, and they know what they're doing, they will throw their head back and be like, oh my gosh, that is going to waste so much time. We already know when things are going to happen. We've already done the representative pull plans. We have already had these discussions. We already have the tax plan. We know when things are going to happen. Stop focusing so much on when things are going to happen. We already know that. Focus on how you're going to make that happen. And that's with tax control. And that comes from those different focuses. What do the superintendent and foreman do? How do we create stability? How do we level work? How do we remove roadblocks? How do we install quality at the source? How do we increase production by obeying production laws? So that is another really key reflection for me. Is if you go to a project and they're talking mostly in their huddle meetings throughout the week when things are going to happen, they don't know what they're doing. If they're focusing mostly on how they're going to execute the things that we already know we should be doing, you know that they are fully immersed in what I call tact control. And so I hope that this podcast little series has been helpful for you. I have absolutely loved doing this with you and going through these principles. I can honestly say there's very few things that I'm more interested in than how you can actually implement these things in the field. And so I'm very, very excited. I'm glad to share them with you, and on we go.
Please join us next time in elevating the entire construction experience for workers, leaders, and companies coast to coast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to share with your construction colleagues and help us spread the word by rating, subscribing, and leaving a review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time on the Elevate Construction Podcast.